A lot of people talk about the impressive six-figure incomes that seem all but guaranteed upon graduating with an MBA degree. But what doesn't get talked about quite enough is the cost. And I don't just mean tuition. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the true cost of a full-time MBA degree program, including the hidden costs that no one really talks about. So let's break it all down to see if it's still worth it for you. Now let's start with the obvious. Tuition fees. Top MBA programs can set you back easily about $60,000 per year. Obviously, this can vary quite a bit from program to program, but if tuition is already that high, without factoring all the other costs I'm about to talk about, you really have to make sure that the degree is going to be worth it for you. Because outside of tuition, you have many more expenses to consider. You'll need to consider living expenses if you have to relocate to attend this program, but then you have other expenses like textbooks. And then you have miscellaneous fees, some of which may be related to technology or services or any number of things that a school can add to the bill. Now, according to US News and World Report, the total cost of an MBA from a top 20 program can easily exceed $200,000. For those of you mathematically inclined, that's nearly $250,000. But wait, there's more. Many students have to quit their full-time job to go and pursue this MBA, which means losing a steady income for 2 years. And that's a significant opportunity cost to consider, especially if you're maybe already making pretty good money. Now, really, that was focusing on the financial burden. Now, these are just the costs associated with the university itself. There's also hidden costs that prospective students tend to overlook. And they're smaller fees, but still nonetheless important to know. For instance, application fees to many of these MBA programs can run you anywhere from $150 to $275. And these are fees per school. Obviously, if you're applying to multiple schools, you'll be paying some sort of fee over and over again. Now, granted, there may be times where they waive this application fee, but again, you'll have to check on the school. Then you'll have to invest time and money into taking the GMAT or the GRE, and that's not even factoring the money that you'll invest to prep for these exams. Obviously, you want the best score you can get to have the best chance of getting admitted to the school that you want. So you're going to be doing a lot of prep work, which takes time and oftentimes takes money if you really want to invest here. And some of those prep courses and study material can run you anywhere from hundreds of dollars to a little north of $1,000. And then if you're an international student and you're wanting to study here in the US, you might face additional expenses like visa fees, health insurance, and of course, travel costs. Relocation may be a little bit more expensive. All these variables can really inflate the cost of this education. Now, that's talking quite a bit about the financial component. Let's talk about a different cost, and that is the time investment. An MBA program, it goes without saying, is a pretty serious time commitment. You'll be spending many hours in class, many hours doing homework and projects, and a lot of time attending networking events, which is a really big reason why a lot of people do MBA programs is for the networking component of it. So getting your MBA and really making the most out of it is in and of itself like a full-time job, if of course you want to make the most of it. This means putting your career on hold for about 2 years, which can be a fairly tough pill to swallow, especially if you're already somewhat established in the field. And then you can also expect a lot in the way of personal time sacrifices. So you'll have less time to spend ultimately with your friends and family, less time to yourself and maybe hobbies that you might have had. Now, of course, all of it can be balanced. It really depends on the person, but again, just to set the expectation, you're going to have to commit a good deal of time here. And the time investment isn't just isolated to the time that you're in the program. It can also start before that. As I mentioned earlier, many programs still require a GMAT or a GRE. And in order to do very well in those exams, as you might want to, you have to spend a good deal of time studying and practicing for those exams. And then as part of the application process, you need to go and get referral letters, you need to write an essay, you need to spend time prepping for the interview. And all that preparation and pre-work before you even apply and even get into the program, that can take many, many months. In fact, it can maybe take up to a year for a lot of folks. But when you combine that prep time with the time in school, with the networking, all of it to make the most of what you would get from this degree and make it worth the financial investment you're making here, all of it requires a good amount of time. Now, when we talk about cost, we think in terms of time and money, and those are quantifiable. There is one intangible cost that I don't see often mentioned, if at all. When we think about a 2-year time commitment for a full-time MBA program, that's 2 years that you're putting your career on hold. Now, obviously, you do this with the expectation that it's going to be better for your career in the long term, or so one hopes. Now, setting aside for a moment the loss of income when you don't work for 2 years, the other cost I wanted to bring up is related to years of work experience. Fact of the matter is, when applying for jobs, one thing that prospective employers look for is work experience. Work experience is probably the most important factor in someone's resume as to whether they get the interview in the first place. Now, obviously, it depends on the type of work experience you have and what roles you're applying for. But when you're early in your career, say 3 or 4 or 5 years, work experience is super critical. In particular, years of work experience. Now, we can have a whole debate on whether it's the number of years versus the quality of those years. Ideally, you'd want to have many years and all of them be good quality, but a recruiter is not going to really know that very well at a glance, so they're probably going to hone in a little bit more on simply the number of years. Now, if you're working already at a high-profile, larger company, it's a bit of a risk to sacrifice 2 years of work experience to go and pursue an MBA full-time. 2 years early in a career is a relatively large percentage of your overall work experience compared to someone who has maybe 20 years of experience. So really the major risk here is that whenever you complete your MBA and you're doing it very early in your career, you may be competing with people that have the same MBA degree, but they have many more years of relevant work experience, which is why I typically recommend against anyone applying for an MBA program before that 4 or 5 year mark. And that's because you just won't be as competitive upon graduation, so you may end up settling for roles that aren't really what you were looking for. But you then need to take them because you maybe have all these student loans you now need to pay off. Now, despite the significant costs, of course, MBAs do have generally a good return on investment. One of the notable advantages, obviously, is the potential for a higher salary and longer-term career prospects. According to the Graduate Management Admission Council, GMAC for short, the median starting salary for MBA graduates in the United States is $115,000, significantly higher than the median salary for bachelor's degree holders. This increase in earning potential can and should offset the cost of an MBA. And the reason there's long-term benefit is that it generally gives someone a good, well-rounded business education, and it's applicable to many different industries, many different job titles, so it's very versatile. And then of course there's the networking component of it, as I mentioned a few times already. The people that you meet in your program are going to be people that you can lean on or talk to, consult with. They can be business partners in the future. You never know where these connections are going to lead. And generally, if you're going into a high caliber MBA program, you're generally gonna meet people in the program that are gonna go off and have some pretty good success in their careers. And these relationships can, of course, lead to many opportunities. It could be job opportunities, business partnerships, mentorships, collaborations. So here you have this lifelong resource that you can depend on. But because of the cost of an MBA, it really underscores the importance of making the most of the degree program, making the most of the networking, really applying yourself so that upon graduation, or of course during the program, you're looking for internships. Now, given the cost of many MBA degree programs, it really underscores the importance of making the most of the experience. You have to go in there with the intent to network and with the intent to pursue a career that's going to give you the best chance of making a really good salary, so that, of course, one, you can pay off any loans that you might have, but two, you set yourself up for future financial success. And really, ultimately, that's what it's all about. Now, if the cost of a full-time MBA seem overwhelming, it's worth considering alternative paths to career advancement. Now, there are several options that can provide a similar benefit, but without the hefty price tag. And if you want to learn what some of those are, make sure to check out my videos where I talk about some online MBA degree options, which are far more affordable, as well as online learning platforms like Coursera, where you can earn certificates in relevant job fields. All of these give you an opportunity to learn, earn credentials, all while maintaining a full-time job. So you spend far less money in the process. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around.